Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here as always, my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, we're diving deeper into Youri Tielemans today. You promised the viewers and the listeners that we would do this. And I don't think I spoke about Tielemans actually on the channel. So I'm excited to do this. But before we get into it, mate, how are you doing?
I'm very good, mate. I'm very good. I recorded the announcement video, obviously late. It was like just gone midnight when I sat down to record and then got it up. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning. And yeah, first of all, I mean, I had within like half an hour, like 50 people that watched it or something like that. So whoever's watching Villa Filler content at 1 in the morning on what is a Saturday night, shout out to you guys. I know I had a conversation in the comments with like Harvey and people like that. So shout out to you guys. But yeah, one of the things that I did promise, mate, is that you and I would go into it in a bit more detail because a deep dive into the transfer was about as likely as me falling asleep halfway through that episode at the time. So I was like, we'll wait for Dan to get back, get the two of us back on the pod. Because you're right, you haven't had the chance to talk about it yet. And it is a very, very interesting deal indeed. And one that perhaps most importantly, given everything that's gone on recently upstairs, this is Unai's guy written all over this transfer this is someone Unai wanted. And just as we did with Buba under Gerrard, the managers said, yes, I want this guy. They've gone and made contact with the player personally, which has massively swung the deal in our favour. And before sort of mid-June has even rolled around, we're underway in the transfer market.
It's a really exciting one, mate, because, you know, Tielemans, I have my reservations, not about him as a player, but just about the capability of which he could potentially operate at. But for the fee, well, it's not a fee. You're getting a player who SofaScore having valued at 33 million euros. You're getting that for free for nothing, which is absolutely crazy. And sort of looking at FBref have his weekly wages as an estimation of 35,000 a week at Leicester. I imagine he was maybe on a bit more than that, and I imagine he will certainly be on more than that. Now he's moved to Villa, but you know he's done what a lot of people do, and that is sort of wait for the contract to sort of roll down, see what the options are, take on the signing on fee and all that kind of stuff, and be the alpha in the negotiations. And it kind of felt at one point that Roma were going to swing in and take him, but thankfully it seems like they were too busy trying to seal up Houssem Aouar, who is another player. I'm glad he's moved because that's just one less player that we have to worry about being into every big transfer window, isn't it, mate? And he's never coming. So I'm glad this has been done. And again, I don't want to be like negative on the podcast, but you know, Tielemans, absolutely phenomenal player, right? But I look at him, and this is a player who is sort of coded almost in the exact same way as Douglas Luiz is, right? Very comfortable in possession, can play as a sort of box to box, or can also play in a pivot. I kind of at first thought he may be sort of occupying the McGinn or Ramsey role as one of the more attacking presences in the midfield, being that box to box, maybe on the right hand side, which is, you know, his preferred side. But the more I think about it, mate, is like, and I'm going to throw this to you, and I'm going to throw this to people in the comments: is this a replacement for Douglas Luiz? Is this a sort of fail-safe option? Like, should a bid come in, we've got our guy, or is this just a case of more games, squad depth, free transfer? You can't pass up on it.
Yeah, I think it's the latter, mate. I really do. I'd be surprised if someone like Dougie leaves sort of this summer. All the noise from sort of the big respectable Villa journos is that this is about rotation. This is about squad depth. This is a player who, and this is one of the things that I did talk about in the announcement video is just what does this mean? Just what does this mean? Because I imagine that we've put a more lucrative contract on the offer than perhaps Roma, perhaps Galatasaray as well, who are really, really interested in Tielemans, it seems. I imagine we've put a bit more down than they have. But I don't think Youri Tielemans at 26 coming into like, you know, a real key part of his career, I don't think you can call him up and go, hey, do you fancy sitting on the bench behind John McGinn and Douglas Luiz for the Villa on a 3-year deal? I don't think he says yes to that. I really don't. And I don't think he's naive enough to think that he's going to walk into this team and start. It seems that he can clearly see the upwards trajectory that the club is on. But that's what intrigues me. And that's what's really interesting about this transfer window is that we're going to want proven players. And that's what Tielemans is. You look at basically one of the things that I sort of glowed about really in that previous videos, how long he's been playing European football for. This is a guy that literally since he was 16 or 17 has been playing on the continent with Anderlecht, then with Monaco, then with Leicester. He's been playing international football for like 6 or 7 years already since his teens. So this is someone that's well accustomed to playing against the best of the best on the continent. It's one where if we'd have paid the 40-50 million to get a contracted Europeans at Leicester that other clubs have been linked with doing in previous seasons, I don't think I'd like this as much. I like it a lot more given that we've paid nothing up front. Obviously, I know that a free transfer is never really a free transfer, but it's a lot less than what I think teams who have been linked to them in previous years would have paid. But yeah, this is basically why I wanted to have you talk about it, to be honest with you, mate, because I thought it'd be good to get a discussion going about what does this mean for the squad? Like,
Yeah.
Where does he fit in?
It's the question, isn't it? It's the question. I sort of instigated a debate on Twitter about it, just as I was in the airport waiting to get on my flight back, and I think a few people kind of took my comments the wrong way when I was like, he's not going to play it. The phrasing I used was legs have gone. His legs obviously haven't gone, but they're going, and the numbers will back it up. The amount of games he's played is absolutely crazy. Someone tweeted today, only Felipe Coutinho has played more games in the Villa squads of any player than in the squad than Tielemans. So, and he's 26, and obviously Coutinho is a couple of years older than him. So he's played a lot of games. He's played a lot of games early on. You ask anyone, right, who has watched Wayne Rooney, they'll all say the same thing: played too much too soon. And I fear that this may have been the case for Tielemans. So I think in a way he's going to have to forcibly take a restricted role, because I don't see him consistently offering what Douglas Luiz, what John McGinn, what Boubacar Kamara, what Jacob Ramsey have been for us this season. There's a lot of games, and that will obviously sort of favour him as well, because the more games you play, the more opportunities there are to play, but also the more opportunities there are to be rested. And yeah, I think the thing is, where does he fit in? Is obviously the question you asked, mate. Personally, I see him as a box-to-box midfielder, right? I think he's so good in possession. But one of the key reasons we signed him, right? I think a lot of teams next season is going to be really different, like results-wise. I think a lot of teams are going to wise up to just how we want to play games and approach them, especially teams sort of at home who, maybe the big teams who do tend to come and try and dominate possession. You're talking your Cities, your Liverpools. I think most teams will sort of engage Villa with a low block, and there's not many ways you can really break down a low block. But one, outstanding attribute that Tielemans has is he's got a wonderful long shot. We saw it in the FA Cup final. This guy knows how to score from range, and having him on the pitch, playing with a sort of a higher line, whether he's sort of in that pivot in the Dougie Luiz role or in one of the wider roles, as we sort of mentioned earlier, having that option to be able to sort of lay a pass off, have someone who can shoot from anywhere from 30 yards out and have a good shot at goal, that's going to be really important. I don't think JJ will play as many games next season. I think JJ has been fantastic. I think he's been really good. And he certainly had me eating my words towards the end of the season, where I said, something ain't right. We need more goals, need more assists. And he has undeniably stepped up and been absolutely brilliant. But when we're talking about if Tielemans is the sort of the bar for what we're looking to recruit for, then JJ has really got to up his game, and I'm sure he will. But I think he's probably the one position in that midfield that isn't as nailed on, I think, when Unai's sort of brought a few more of his players in.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think most of that comes down to age.
Yeah. That's it. It's experience, isn't it?
I think it's easier to get a 23, 24-year-old to accept a rotational place in a squad than it is a 27, 28-year-old. I think that is what it boils down to ultimately. There are some things that I'm not totally sold on. Like I said, the amount of football he's played is a massive thing. To use an analogy, I really like if you cut his legs open and counted the rings, he's a 30-year-old footballer. Made because he's played sort of 10 years of football already. It's why I think Real Madrid are going to get the best version of Jude Bellingham that you'll see, because you're already seeing him playing with strapping on his legs in his teens. And if he stays at Real Madrid for 5 years, I think 20 to 25 will be the best Jude Bellingham that you'll see, because that is his prime, just shunted forward a few years because he started playing for the Blues at 16 or something. I think it's the same. I kind of felt, though, I'll be honest, mate, tools a bit for Leicester. I kind of felt that by the end, and he's not the first player to ever do that. He won't be the last player to ever do that. But I kind of felt that it wasn't like, it wasn't do or die for keeping him in the Premier League. And look, like, you can say that about however many players in the Leicester squad, to be honest with you. I think they're almost all as guilty of it each other. And I think that's been, in the comments after the last video, that's what a lot of people were talking about. Is like, relegation fodder sort of thing. And I was like, I think that's harsh, but I don't like, obviously he's got a real cause to play for now, and hopefully we won't be in a similar position to Leicester. But kind of felt like that when I watched him a little bit.
I think, it's a difficult one, in it, because I think if there's one thing that I hate to talk about Jack Grealish again, but there's one thing that the Champions League final has sort of taught us, or at least it's sort of become apparent to me, is that people who think they understand football fundamentally don't. Like, being a fan and being a player are two so different things. Like, they really are. So, there were so many people. I'm not going to get into the debate of wishing him well and all that kind of stuff, because it's just, it's already happened at this point, and it was a ridiculous argument anyway. But Youri Tielemans would have known probably 18 months ago that he didn't want to be at Leicester, and Leicester weren't in a position to sell, but I think they probably wouldn't have been able to sell at the price they wanted to. And then Tielemans has obviously sort of refused to enter contract negotiations. So then there's no sort of, listen, sign on for another year or two, and we promise we'll sell you, so we can get a fee or whatever. There was obviously none of that. Tielemans wanted to be in control of his own destiny. So he had probably clocked out a while ago. And whilst that is, to a fan unacceptable, he didn't want to be there. You can't keep somebody who doesn't want to be there. And that is obviously going to affect his performance. And I'm not defending that, because, listen, as a fan, I want people to be giving 110% every time. But I think, that's where it's sort of like being a fan and sort of being a pro, you will never see eye to eye on that aspect, because he quite clearly didn't want to be at Leicester. And listen, this is a player who Pep Guardiola wanted, Arteta wanted last summer as well. He's a player who was fairly in demand, and you don't just become a bad player because your team got relegated. Like, that's obviously not how it works. Plenty of great teams have left. Look at that whole team. How that whole team got picked apart when they went down. Andy Robertson, Harry Maguire. There's so many, Jared Bowen, so many gems that can be on it. And maybe I'm not describing Tielemans as a gem, because he was already shining. He's not a diamond in the rough. We already knew how good this guy was. He's played in the Champions League for Monaco. Yeah. He was there or thereabouts of Leicester as well. So, to argue, the comments on your video, mate, he's obviously going to give 100%. That's the thing, I think, like, with him, and which is probably kind of backs my argument in a way of sort of, and yours as well, of him not having the legs, is, you know, a lot of these, you know, people aren't watching Leicester every game, but, you know, the eye test is revealing. You know, the eye test is revealing. The eye test will tell you that at times probably didn't track his man when he should have done, and probably, you know, could have tackled a little bit harder or picked a better pass, but chose not to. But, you know, you know, we've got somebody who, you know, what is his ambition is clearly to be playing European football. And, you know, we've got the very minimum of that, and he'll be looking to kick on. So, you know, for very selfish reasons, Youri Tielemans will be 100% invested in Aston Villa. I don't think that's anything that people should argue or worry about, mate.
I would agree. I think Leicester fans are pretty aggrieved, which is interesting, because he's been, I think, on the record at points of saying he wants Champions League football. That's what he was going to leave Leicester for. And I think it looks like that's not really available for him. And so they kind of feel that he's left for a club that was, obviously when they were in the Premier League, around a similar kind of stature. I think it's one where, you know, if he'd have left for a City and Arsenal, they would have gotten, all right, fair enough. But I think it's surprised them slightly. I think that, I mean, look, like it's one where I think for me, I'm very happy with this transfer on the basis that it's a free one. Because
100%, yeah,
I think that's what makes it a good deal for me. That's why I'm happy with it. That's why I'm not really bothered about his legs, because I don't think he'll have to play 38 games in a season. I don't think he'll have to play Thursday, Sunday, because this is about rotation. It's an interesting transfer that we've gone for someone so high profile. I expected a high profile striker to rival Ollie. I expected a high profile winger to come and take one of, if not both spots. I expected a high profile right back. And, you know, it is really interesting that we've gone so big in the midfield. But as you sort of said at the top, mate, when this becomes available, you'd almost be stupid not to do something with it. I think when the opportunity to get Youri Tielemans on a free transfer slides across your desk, I think it's easy to see why Unai wanted it, because the track record is there and it is all there. And I am really, really excited by this transfer. And we are becoming specialists in the free agent market. I don't think that's controversial to say. I don't think it's too soon. I think we are a club that can clearly go out there, and that's a really difficult market to operate in, because so many clubs can come and get involved in deals where normally they wouldn't have a shot, because they haven't got the capital to come and stump up a 50 million transfer fee. But Galatasaray can come in and try and sign a Tielemans now, because it's all about weekly wages and the project you can sell. And so, yeah, it's a very exciting deal. And I sort of said in the video that the real test of this will be who's in the midfield on the team sheet the first day of the season.
Yeah.
I don't really think that's it. I think it's more November, December, who's starting 3 or 4 league games in a row. That's when I think we'll know what the pecking order is.
Yeah, and I guess it'll depend what happens with the Conference League as well, won't it? Because obviously we're in it. We're currently in the one of the unseeded teams. Depending on how that qualifier goes as well, you know, we'll determine what groups we end up in. You know, there's so many spinning plates. You know, we end up in a group with Juventus, you know, Frankfurt, whoever. Then the sort of the way that you balance the squads, and obviously, I mean, Premier League fixtures come out next week.
Yeah.
The way that we're going to have to balance the squad and sort of hope that the fixtures fall kindly for us, and all this, you know, it's all going to impact who plays when, where, and why. Because, I mean, you know, like to talk about Cam Archer and Aaron Ramsey, they could be getting Premier League minutes. Not like, I'm not talking about starts, but, you know, we're talking final 20, final 25, seeing games out, or just, you know, purely for rotation purposes, keeping Ollie fit for the Thursday, keeping whoever else may be fit for the Thursday. So it's you know, I don't think Tielemans is going to be the only midfielder that we sign. I think we're probably going to see 2 or 3 more midfielders, if I'm honest. I think as you say, I think there's a striker. I think there's then the second striker, which is like the Asensio or whoever that we've been looking for, that shadow striker, winger role, the Bailey role. I think Bailey will have plenty to offer, by the way, as well. I don't know about you, mate. then a right back, and then I think that's it. So I think we'll be looking, like, you know, obviously the midfield is the one position where we have, you know, probably the most players, but also like simultaneously the least depth, because we play more midfielders than anything else.
Yep.
So I do think we'll need a couple more, and it'll be interesting to see who we go for now, because obviously there was, I texted you about the Chelsea lad earlier, the Italian guy won the Golden Boot and the Golden Ball award at the under-20s. He's been linked with a loan move. That's probably a separate transfer rumor mill that we'll do. But obviously, when you're talking about the sort of the profile of that player, we're talking about a kid who is obviously a very talented kid. But I mean, if he's coming in, what does that mean for Aaron? What does that mean for Tim, who comes back? What does that mean? Finazaz, another one. I would love to see Finazaz in the conference.
I really want to see him 100%.
Yeah.
You know who'd be bloody useful right now, mate? Carney Chukwuemeka, and it really pisses me off.
Does it though?
I'm not gonna lie.
Does it?
Yeah. Really does. Well, yes and no. Yes and no.
What?
No,
what,
because
like the situation, or like
it just that. I said it at the time. I don't think he's made that decision. I don't really think kids at 17, 18, or whatever he is, are calling their own shots on transfer deals. I think he'll have a team and have his family.
Yeah.
And I think he's been sold the Chelsea picture and the big money, and he's gone, yeah, fuck it, why not? But I'm annoyed at the fact that it felt, for whoever made that decision, it felt like a good idea, because he would have been perfect. Cesare Casadei, who he's at Chelsea, so we'd be signing a wonder kid midfielder from Chelsea when we had one already. Yeah, it is frustrating, but ultimately you gotta have your cake and eat it, mate. You made your bed, go lie in it, sort of situation. But it does annoy me in that one of these rotation options that we now have to go out and sign and identify and be okay with being a rotation piece. There was a perfectly molded one right at the club.
It's true. But I mean, he's been linked with a move to Milan. We got 20 million quid for him. You're right. He would have played games, but we've assembled. This is the crazy thing, right? Our midfield currently costs less than what Chelsea paid for Carney Chukwuemeka. John McGinn, 2.5 million. Douglas Luiz, 15 million. Jacob Ramsey, free through the academy. Boubacar Kamara, free transfer. Youri Tielemans, free transfer. That's 5 players that cost less than Carney Chukwuemeka. So it's pretty crazy, but yeah, I imagine he's probably kicking himself a little bit as well. But hey, don't hate the player, mate. Hate the game. That's the way I see it. Villa got a bit of money, but it'll be interesting. It will be interesting to see who of the younger lads does get to play in the Conference League and all that kind of stuff. Should we make it to the groups and all that kind. But guys, let us know your thoughts on the Tielemans deal. We've had a few days to simmer and sort of think about it. It hasn't properly sunk in for me, mate. I can't lie. Obviously, I was busy at the time, and as were you, which is why you managed to get around to the episode just a bit later. But it hasn't really until I sort of see the training montage and all that kind of stuff. That's when it will feel more real. That's where I can get a bit more excited about it. But yeah, guys, hit a like if you haven't already. Comment your thoughts in the comment section down below and subscribe for more. Up the Villa.